the moment of truth, Seema Iyer, Frank Rothman, and the question is, despite all of our debates about defective character and whether his difficult past matter, the ultimate question of fact here is whether or not this was an accident. And the burden, Frank Rothman, is on the state to prove that it wasn't. I think that testimony was very powerful.
I'd like to agree with you as a defense attorney for life, but this kid is not getting it done.
I think you're sitting too close to Seema Iyer down there, putting something in the water down there in that studio.
You know me. I've never been a prosecutor, never will be. I kind of root for everyone who's on trial.
Except Eric Hainstock.
No, I'm rooting for him, but it's not happening. This kid is not prepped to evoke any emotion. He is like a robot. This was a tragic event, and as defective as he is, his lawyer has to make this jury feel like this was a tragic mistake, that this is something this kid regrets and will regret until the day he dies. And he's just sitting up there matter-of-factly saying, yeah, I shot him to get him off me.
You know, it's amazing. You just made me think of something I hadn't thought of before. And both of you are relatively new to us here on Best Defense, Seema and Frank. But before you came, we had a kid on trial for shooting in cold blood his parents and his stepsister. His name was Cody Posey. All right, that's testimony no parent wants to hear. Seema Iyer, Frank Rothman. Let me see if I can find one area we might all agree on. This kid's being tried as an adult. Frank, is that the right decision, trying a teenager, 15 years old at the time, as an adult?
Wow, putting me on the spot. Is it the right thing to do?
Frank!
No, it's not. It really isn't.
Thank you.
The sentencing laws. What troubles me, the number of warnings, the fact that this kid made it known that this teacher wasn't going to live to see homecoming, it's very disturbing, and he needs to be punished. And I know I sound like Seema now, I sound like a prosecutor.
Yep.
But he needs something, I think, a little more harsh than the juvenile laws allow. I'm not saying put him away for 30 years or 20 years, but
that is what you're saying, though. And Seema Iyer, Frank, I think, is that we have cameras everywhere now. We didn't, of course, 100 years ago, or really even 50 years ago. But I also wonder if perhaps it's about the free access to guns, especially for those who are defective, to use your word, or perhaps even more severely mentally ill.
It's cameras everywhere. It's every kid has a cell phone and is using that to capture events as they're unfolding. Things that we only heard about, we now get to see live on all kinds of these electronic devices. But you know, it seems to be happening more and more. It's got to be related to the easy access to weapons, to automatic weapons. And I think Seema is correct that it's kids see other kids getting this notoriety, this fame, and there's a lot of copycats going around for sure. And this kid that's on trial in Wisconsin, on trial for his life. And I think you said earlier that somebody missed the cries for help early in this kid's life, and it's tragic, and I think it's true that that's exactly what happened. There were a million red flags for this kid, and no one acknowledged it, and now it looks like he's going to spend a good chunk of the next 20, 30, 40 years in jail. And
he claims it was an accident, but either way, he did bring those guns into the school. He acknowledges that. And Frank, let me come over to you. Do you think that, I mean, we could talk about what went wrong with this kid, but let's focus on the one area we all seem to agree. He's defective. Do you think that's a defense?
It's not a defense. Anybody who does this kind of act is defective. Bringing two guns to school, I think, is prima facie defective. I think where Seema and I disagree, I don't think this kid is doing a great job of evoking sympathy, or should I say his lawyer is not doing a great job of making this kid sympathetic. Seema was of the opinion that none of this stuff was relevant. I think it's highly relevant and probative as to who he is as a human being.
But probative is not the issue, Frank.
Why not?
Of course it is.
Tends to prove what? What exactly? If the defense is that this was an accident, then what exactly does being molested, allegedly molested, and I stand on that, allegedly molested by your brother, what does that have to do with the defense? And were there any documentations, or any documentation that he was in fact molested?
Well, anything? I'm sure you'd have a wonderful cross-examination of him, but that doesn't change the fact that who we are, what our experiences are in life, you bring to the courtroom. And if it helps or tends to explain why you did something on a certain day, why you were so sensitive, why you had issues at school, why you couldn't get along with other people, and clearly that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to establish what went wrong in this kid's life that brought him to the courtroom today, having brought 2 handguns into his school, or 1 shotgun and 1 handgun, and discharged it 3 or 4 or 5 times. So his life experience, what happened to him as a kid, whether he's an alcoholic, whether or not he was sexually abused, it all goes into his makeup as a human being.
All right, Seema, I know you're trying to jump in, and Frank, I know you got a lot to say. Frank's being a real gentleman today, I want you to know, Seema, because when he's down there with a guy, it's the fisticuffs are off. All right, we're going to take a quick break because we've got a little gear shifting to do, but we're going to keep Frank and Seema in play, and we'll keep duking it out on this case, as far as I'm concerned, on the witness stand. But how much can he help himself, this defendant, given the horrific nature of the alleged crime? Let me bring my guests into the conversation. Frank Rothman and Seema Iyer, both criminal defense attorneys, but Seema also a former prosecutor. And so let me come to Frank Rothman. What does this have to do with the defense? Help me out, my brother.
Wow. This just completes the picture of who this kid is and why he's so, to use the word defective, why a kid like this would bring a weapon or 2 weapons to school as a result of being suspended or teased. It completes the narrative as to what makes this guy tick. And for Seema, a very experienced defense attorney, but sounds like an even more experienced prosecutor, to suggest that this stuff is objectionable, I don't think...
It is objectionable. It's not, I'm not suggesting
Well, I'm overruling your objection.
The judge is not acknowledging that it is objectionable. It's not relevant. It's not going directly to his defense.
It's highly relevant as to who this kid is, what makes him tick, and why he did
Who he is is not relevant to this case.
the things.
Who he is not relevant to this case.
Wow.
It's not.
Listen, I love a great argument, and I'd let you guys just roll on, but we've got a lot of time here together today, so let's take a very quick break. Now, stay